We hear one? All right. Okay. Good morning. Good morning, my colleagues, and good morning to the people of Guam. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing. We have returned from recess. The only folks we're waiting for right now are the panel, but being that we're already all here, is there any motion or amendments on page 2? I don't see a motion or amendment for page 2 of chapter 1. All right, I don't see an amendment for page 3. Any motion or amendments? Okay. Folks, we're moving on to page 4. I do see an amendment proffered by Senator Amanda Shelton, and it's on line 15, page 4, line 15, letter Z, Manpower Development Fund. Just a reminder to my colleagues, this was discussed when we were on the floor, but because when the bill was referred back to committee, all what that amendment was basically washed out. That has to be reproffered, and then we all vote on it, and then we'll move on from there. Senator Shelton, you.
Posted is that once this thing, all the amendments is on.
Yeah, well, after this, then it will stay unless anybody objects. Senator Amanda Shelton, there you go. Ma'am, if you could.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As you stated, this is an amendment that we worked on the floor in session before we moved to this virtual platform. And this amendment received unanimous consent. And I'd like to read it for the public one more time. It is the Manpower Development Fund. Changed from $3,200,000 to $4,600,000. And again, this is with the advice from the Department of Labor, as well as BBMR and our folks here on the line who assured us that this is a pretty conservative number. We've seen a steady increase in our construction industry, and we can expect this amount from the foreign labor H-2B visa application fees here in the next year. And so as we discussed before, this is money that will go directly to the Guam Community College and the Department of Labor to enhance apprenticeship and training programs and prepare our local people for skilled labor jobs. So this will help to advance our local workforce. And I appreciate everyone's support once again.
Thank you, Senator Shelton.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to thank the co-sponsor of the amendment, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, who is the chair of the Committee on Labor, for her assistance as well.
All right, thank you. And thank you to Senator Lee.
With that, I second the motion.
All right, thank you. And for discussion, I'm going to go down the list of all the names of all my colleagues so that nobody gets missed. I will start with my Vice Chair, Senator Clinton. Do you have any comments or anything for discussion, sir?
No objections.
Thank you. Madam Speaker. Speaker Tina Mooney Barnes, any comment? None?
I support the amendment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker, Senator Tadina Nelson, ma'am.
No, I just want to thank Senator Shelton and Senator Lee for the amendment. I support it.
All right, thank you. Senator Lee, do you have any comments or to make or anything for discussions?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm in support of the amendment, and I just want to reiterate to my colleagues that we're still opting for a measured approach here by adopting this $4.6 million figure. This is a new projection of about 2,300 workers to boost the Manpower Development Fund, and this increase will go directly to help train local workers to gain the skills that they need to fill these construction jobs with Guam residents rather than foreign citizens. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Kelly, ma'am, do you have anything you would like to comment?
Just Masi, Mr. Chair, I just want to have thanked the committee and yourself, Mr. Chair, for having a committee on whole where I believe we went through about 2 rounds of asking every question we could think of, I think, until all of our questions were exhausted. It was so important to hear expert analysis and have, excuse me, the understanding that that expert analysis is based on real figures, real data that are happening in time, so that, you know, it gives us comfort in understanding them. And I also wanted to point out that I appreciate that they took a conservative approach, because, you know, I just think that's the best approach is conservative, that they didn't take the top of even what the expert was saying, that they took a very conservative, measured approach. So I just appreciate that we had that chance before we went into this committee to really scrutinize the measure very thoroughly. So just Masi.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Senator Peter Terlai. Sir, do you have any comments or?
Oh, Joe, I support the amendment.
All right, thank you. Senator Therese Terlai, ma'am.
No objection.
Thank you. Senator Sabina Paris.
So I support the amendment.
Thank you. Senator Tello Taidagui, ma'am.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Chair, and for the listening audience, I think it's important to note that any revenue that comes into the manpower development goes directly to Guam Election Commission. I mean, I'm sorry, we got that on our mind right now. The Department of Labor and GCC. And it's been said in the past that when this fund exceeded the amount that was projected, I was talking to Greg Massey, that they have a difficult time in capturing that excess revenue, and they have to go through a whole list of requirements in order to get that funding. So I think what we're doing here is allowing them that if there is any excess revenue and that the projections are higher than what we perceive them to be, at least they have that money. But it's important that they're cautious, Mr. Chair, and monitor this funding amount, monthly, to ensure that they don't overspend or overcommit, not overspend, but overcommit these funds, and follow the tracking rigorously. So I appreciate the amendment, and I stand in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tello. Senator Mary Torres, ma'am.
Thank you. I just want to commend Senator Shelton and Senator Lee for working on this, because I think what this Manpower Development Fund does by increasing it is it allows Department of Labor and others to develop programs and to plan ahead for the fiscal year. So I think that is the most important part about giving a true reflection of what the projections are. So with that, I just want to thank them for catching that, and also to give my support for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Moylan.
No comments. Thank you.
All right. Senator Castro, sir.
No objections, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Luis Muñoz, ma'am.
Good morning. I have no comments. I support the amendment.
All right.
Vice Chair Shelton, aye. Speaker Muñoz Barnes.
Honggan Manana Sijos.
Sijos Masi. Speaker Muñoz Barnes, aye. Senator Lee.
Honggan.
Senator Lee, aye. Senator Therese Terlahi.
Again.
Senator Therese Terlahi, aye. Senator Pito Terlahi.
Honggan.
Senator Pito Terlahi, aye. Senator Mars Taitano.
Honggan.
Senator Mars Taitano, aye. Senator Castro.
Honggan.
Senator Castro, aye. Senator Moylan.
Aye.
Senator Moylan, aye. Senator Muñoz.
Honggan.
Senator Muñoz, aye. Senator Vice Speaker Nelson.
Honggan.
Vice Speaker Nelson, aye. Senator Paris.
Honggan.
Senator Paris, aye. Senator Torres.
Honggan.
Senator Torres, aye. Senator Taitagui.
Again.
Senator Taitagui, aye. Mr. Chair, you have 15 unanimous votes.
Thank you, my colleagues. Just a reminder to all my colleagues that all the amendments that is proffered during this committee will be engrossed in the bill, so that when we do go back into session, it'll be provided to all my colleagues, the bill, so that we all have an understanding of what was approved by the body. All right. We will now move. I don't see any other amendments for page 4. Is there any amendments? Senator Lee, ma'am.
Sujus Masi, Mr. Chair, not an amendment at this time, but I did just want to provide a note for the committee and then a kind of a bookmark for Senator Shelton and myself that we will need to go later in the bill to increase the appropriations to both GCC and the Department of Labor based on the successful outcome of the last amendment. Sujus Masi.
Yes, ma'am. We will have, we will bookmark that. There are no further amendments. I don't see any further. Senator Sabina Paris?
Yes, I just need clarification on the recycling revolving fund. So in one of the handouts that we received, there is a discrepancy between OFB and BBMR, about a $500,000, exactly a $500,000 difference. And I reached out to Director Shimizu to get the number on car registrations or vehicle registrations for the year. And the calculation falls in between those two numbers. And in fact, there's a 16% drop in vehicle registrations from last year. So if I could get some clarification from OFB regarding the projections for the next year and how they got that number.
All right, Steve, do you have get some information for page 4, line 26, letter AJ, recycling revolving fund of 2,865,523,000. Am I correct, Senator Paris?
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct. Okay.
The recycling revolving fund, page 4, line 26. I think Senator Paris's question is, how did you get that number? And
Senator, yeah, the figure that we showed in our revenue was basically the figure that was trending at the time we gathered that information to project forward. There might be a slight decrease in total registration, but again, I believe the only reason why the slight decrease is only because of, I believe, COVID is just delaying everything. Cars are still out there. People still need to register, but it could be because of the COVID and this emergency that's just preventing them from registering the vehicles. But these vehicles are still on the road and they'll still be running on the road. Now, whether or not I hope to God they're registered, but like everything else, everything is just taking a back seat at the time being. But we hope that the 60% will recover by next fiscal year.
Senator Paris, do you have new numbers that you want to share with the colleagues, our colleagues?
So my calculation is based on what most vehicle registrations are based on, which are the vehicles rather than the large machine equipment and motorcycles. But it falls in between the two numbers. And, like Steve said, perhaps there's a delay in registration. So we don't know the full effect of that right now. But I think I would caution regarding those numbers, perhaps, if it doesn't meet the projections. So that's just basically a concern that I want to place on the record for now.
Understood. Note, information is well taken. Only because just for a comment for folks, my colleagues, is that I worked at Revenue and Tax, and there's been many occasions where there are a pile of registrations that are being processed. It's a matter of timing. But I understand. We are well informed now. Thank you. So noted. Anything else? I don't see a motion on page 4. We will now move to page 5, which you see on the chat. We have a few amendments proffered on page 5, proffered by Senator Kelly Marsh, and we will begin with. I think the first one is page 5. Just to keep it in order, Senator Kelly, page 5, line 17, before we go to your page 5, line 26. All right, Senator Kelly?
Yes, I think it's more appropriate. I think I've asked
You want to
for
go to
some guidance
26
on this,
first?
but I think, yeah, I think it's more appropriate to deal with the actual amendment before we start estimating at totals. So if I can just wait till we get to that particular agency.
Okay, so your amendments are, but you have two amendments for page 5. Do you want to address any of them right now? Because we're going to have to address it because so we can close chapter 1 and start moving along, ma'am.
Okay, let me look at that one. So for page 5, let's see.
You can choose to pick in what order you want. Page numbers, line 17 or line 26. That'll be
Yes,
your call, man.
So with that, we've been having discussions with CAHA, and we realize that all of these discussions, you know, everybody's working at a moment in time and with the best information that they have going forward. But in our discussions with CAHA, we found out that there was a $14,000 and I believe $500 discrepancy between what OFB was calling the federal award coming in and the federal award that CAHA is stating. So with that, this amendment is just correcting the actual award that CAHA is receiving. And it's been listed as over $309,000 and not the lower amount, the $14,000 less amount that OFB maybe had gathered earlier on, perhaps before the formal award was announced.
All right, so would it be proper that we ask Steve to OFB to respond before I open the floor to the colleagues, Senator Kelly, and he can bring clarity to that information you're providing.
Yes, Senator. This will not be a problem as this is federal dollars. It will not affect the bottom line of the local funds. COG, you just have to make sure that it has the local match to match it, which I believe it does.
Okay. So Senator Kelly, we're only looking at on your amendment is to amend line 17, page 5 from 294,800 to 309,300. Am I correct?
Yes, so it's just to make it match up with their actual award as they've been informed what the award is.
All right, do I have a second so we can move forward on that one, so we can continue the discussion? Senator Clint, I see your hand raised, you seconded. I'll open it up for discussion and I'll begin with, I'm just gonna go down the list again with all the senators so nobody's missed. Senator Clint, do you have anything you wanna comment to that amendment?
No, just that if this is the actual award that they're getting, then we should just correct the numbers.
All right, Senator Shelton?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I do support the amendment, and I thank the Oversight Chair for bringing it to our attention. I think this is something that we also discussed on the floor, that these federal matching grant aids may be numbers that are fluctuating, and I think there was an amendment made to allow for the technical corrections by the OFB staff or legal counsel. So I just want to, I don't know if that's something for us to also move on in this committee, perhaps.
All right, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do share the same sentiments as the Secretary, so I support the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker, Senator Nelson.
No comment, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator Lee.
So just Masi, Mr. Chair, I share the same sentiments as our legislative secretary, and I'm not sure who it was that proffered that initial kind of blanket amendment, but I think that it's important to revisit it at this time or as soon as we're completed with the Marsh Titano amendment, and I support it. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Senator Peter Terlai, sir.
If we meet the part for our government, the matching, then it's okay. I support the amendment.
All right, thank you. Senator Theresa Lai, ma'am.
No objection, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator Sabina Paris.
I support it.
All right, thank you. Senator Tello Taitigui, Minority Leader, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question with regards to the amount that was proffered for the FY20 budget, the difference. I noticed that last year in the same section, there was a less than $800 in 2020. So it was like $294,000 last year, and then this year now it's $294,800, and now we're increasing it an additional $14,500, and these are federal grants and aid. I guess it was said earlier, I'm sorry, there was a call I had to take real quick, that this amount is now increased, meaning that we're also going to get an increase in funding coming to the agency as well. I guess it's to Senator Marsh, since she's the oversight chair, if I can ask her that, please.
Yes, please. Senator Kelly, if you could respond to that.
Yes, so if you're saying that that is an increase to CAHA from the federal government, then that is the case.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Just wanted to verify. I'm noticing that it is has increased throughout the years, and that's a good thing, and I appreciate that, especially with the arts. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair. No further comments.
Thank you. Senator Torres, ma'am.
I'm in support, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Moylan.
And no comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Senator Castro. Will.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. If I could go ahead and posit a question for the chair. Senator Marsh, is it possible, is there anything that would preclude the chief executive from using her transfer authority to meet either the matching requirement or otherwise provide the necessary revenues to the agency?
Let me just look at where we're at just to make sure my answer is correct for you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just comment as she's preparing to respond. You know, I can understand the need for the body to address these issues of maintenance of effort. You know, I served in a very short stint in a federal programs division at one point in time. There is absolutely no obligation to appropriate additional monies for this. If it was not just this program, but any program relative to federal funded programs, it's my position, Mr. Chairman, that perhaps if it was a priority of the administration, that the chief executive can go ahead and transfer those monies. I think that a letter indicating such would fulfill that need in good faith. And so that's my question to the chair.
All right. Senator Kelly, do you have a response to that?
If I could ask for a moment's recess, I just want to, like I said, I just want to make sure that my answer is correct when we're in this place.
All right. While you're double checking, Steve, you have a comment to that because you were on that side of the house at one point. Maybe you can comment to kind of reassure us all of exactly what Senator Castro's comment was, which is pretty good.
Yeah, well, typically these grants that are given to the agencies and departments annually, they normally come fairly consistent, but there are a couple of years that the grant may go up a few dollars, it may go down a few dollars, but in general, the program is normally funded at the previous year's level. And if there is a change, the change is very minute. CAHA has been receiving this grant at least as far back as I know, 2016. I mean, it probably go back further. And in 2016, their total expenditures all the way up to 2019 is hovering about an average about maybe 281,000, 85,000. So This one going back up, if the amount is increased this year by the 14,500 to about $300,000, it's probably, according to what I have here, it's probably the highest grant it's received. We are checking in to find out what the local match requirement is. Is it MOE? Is it hard cash? And what the percentage is. But I do believe that based on their appropriation out of the special fund, they should be sufficient at least to cover the additional 14,500 in costs.
All right, Senator Will.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the commentary by the director, but here we are talking about, again, the FY21 budget. And I've made a commitment to you that in your conservative estimate of a minus 49 million from the original submission, that I would be inclined to support that. I understand the role and the mission of CAHA. I understand the importance of other federally funded programs, but I can tell you, many of you already know this, whether it's the Serve Guam Commission, whether it's the consolidated grant at DOE, whether it's this specific federally funded opportunity with CAHA, it's really within the prerogative of the executive branch to find the necessary resources. I'm not the chief executive, but perhaps if you revisit the need for additional deputies or revisit the deconsolidation of those agencies, perhaps those monies can be leveraged. I would submit that in most instances and not, there isn't a hard cash requirement. Usually the use of government space or the use of locally funded positions to provide a support role to these grants, usually that suffices. And there's almost always an opportunity to petition for the granting authority to provide an exception, especially in these financial circumstances. And again, I just want to say for the record, Dr. Taitano, that I support CAHA. I think they serve a very important role in this community. But I also support the need to hold the line when it comes to government revenues. And I support my earlier petition to the chief executive to go ahead and transfer that money off, perhaps from vacancies that come from attrition or promotion in rank. I think that if the political will was there, they can find the money from within. But for me to support any additional increases, whether it's 14,000 and it adds up when you get to the 40th agency to 1.4 million, it's just not something I'm inclined to do, Mr. Chairman. With that said, I don't think I don't need a response. I just want to register my objection, and we can go on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Senator Muñoz, do you have any comments, ma'am?
No comments, Mr. Chair.
All right. Being that there, Senator Tello, you wanted to follow up on that one?
Thank you. I just have a follow-up question. I'm looking at the CAHAs on page 81 and where the funding is coming from. We have general fund and we also have tourist attraction fund. So the intent is to increase this funding, 14,500. Where's this funding is going to come from?
All right, we'll leave that to Senator Kelly to respond. Senator Kelly.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, madam.
I know Senator Kelly did ask for a recess to find some answers. So I'd just like to request again for that recess to give her the opportunity to be a part of this discussion because it is her agency. So
okay.
Give her that
then let's take a 5-minute and hopefully that'll be sufficient, a 5-minute recess. Thank you, my colleagues. We'll be in a 5-minute recess. Thank you. 2-1. All right, thank you. We're back from recess. There was a question posed by Senator Tello in reference to page 81, further down in the Budget Act, and there was also still a comment from Senator Will Castro. Senator Kelly, if you could just please give us an answer.
Yes, you know,
or a
I
response
just wanted
that.
to make sure, Situas Masi, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make sure that I was going to be giving correct information and re-looked at that award grant, the grant award that just came in a few days ago. So if I could, it was the way that Senator Will was talking about things that that threw me off a little bit. And so again, I just wanted to double check. So the point is that the grant award, OFB went, I'm assuming on historical amounts, and they received the award just a few days ago. And so getting that information, we wanted to have it be accurately reflected in this section, that when we're talking about federal matching grants, that grant award is actually correct for the award.
All right, and on Senator Tello's question, let me pause. Senator Will, did that kind of like answer your statement or your question or your comments?
Well, the question was, couldn't this be addressed with a transfer authority of the chief executive? But I do want to state for Senator Kelly, thank you for the sidebar that we had. And it was important that you made that clarification with me. So you contended that perhaps you're not recommending that we adjust the budget upward. As a matter of fact, you were suggesting that with OFB's assistance, you would shift monies within the existing cap from one or more of your agencies. Is that still something you're looking at? Because if it is, then I'd be inclined to support any technical modification that wouldn't increase the budget. Otherwise, to increase the budget by even 14,000, I'd have to object.
Right, and so that was what threw me off, is talking about some of these other aspects. And so I want to assure everyone that it's just working within my agencies. We've been working with our agencies and communicating with them and having them communicate with each other and their boards. So it is not affecting anything outside of my committee. It's a little bit of shifting that they're going to be doing amongst themselves, so that they can meet this federal grant. But again, in this section, it's just simply creating that technical correction of what they were awarded.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator.
I'm not sure what that means. Maybe you can answer this for me. Does this amendment in any way increase the budget that I'm looking at that you proposed, your initial negative 49 million reduction?
No, the amendment only increases and recognizing the federal grants in aid requiring local match. And being what Senator Kelly brought up, is they're going to handle it within. But when you look at page 5, it says total federal on line 26, total federal matching grants in aid revenues. It doesn't really. There's not much of an increase, and it's within federal grants. So if you're anticipating it's going to overall, I don't believe it does, because it's federal grant money. It's not local money. We're not increasing the local revenue base.
All right. Okay. All right. Thanks, Joe.
Yes. So, Situas Masi, Mr. Chair, for pointing
Sorry,
that
Mr.
out.
Chairman. Sorry, Mr.
That it's federal monies that come in, and just the technical correction. But for the local side, it's just within the committee that we're shifting, and we're not increasing.
All right. And I think Senator Tello, I'm hoping that answers it, that Senator Kelly would.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I thank you so much, Senator Marsh, for the explanation, Marsh Taitano, for that, and appreciate your work you're doing. Thank you so much.
All right. I will ask now the body to give their comments. I will go down the list so that we can then move to a vote. Senator Clint Rogel, sir.
Aye.
No, we're not voting yet. You're in support. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I thought we already went around to give our comments. We should move to the vote.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Let's move to the votes. Joe, call the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the amendment by Senator Marstaitano, seconded by Senator Rigel. Chairman San Agustin?
Aye.
Chairman San Agustin, aye. Vice Chair Rigel?
Aye.
Vice Chair Rigel, aye. Vice Chair Shelton?
Hungan, aye.
Vice Chair Shelton, aye. Speaker Munya Barnes?
Hungan.
Speaker Munya Barnes, aye. Senator Lee?
Hungan.
Senator Lee, aye. Senator Therese Terlahi?
Again.
Senator Therese Terlahi, aye. Senator Peter Terlahi?
Again.
Senator Peter Terlahi, aye. Senator Marstaitano?
Again.
Senator Marstaitano, aye. Senator Castro?
Again.
Senator Castro, aye. Senator Moylan?
Jim? Is Senator Jim? There you go. Senator Jim, we need your vote.
On the vote.
I'm sorry. Nay.
Senator Moylan, nay. Senator Munya?
Again.
Senator Munya, aye. Vice Speaker Nelson?
Again.
Vice Speaker Nelson, aye. Senator Perez?
Again.
Senator Perez, aye. Senator Torres?
Again.
Senator Torres, aye. Senator Taitugui?
Good.
Senator Taitugui, aye. Mr. Chair, you have 14 ayes and 1 nay.
All right, thank you, my colleagues. The motion passes. It'll be engrossed into the bill. Senator Kelly, I apologize. Senator Kelly, you have another amendment. I don't know if you want to pursue your amendment when OFB can make the updates on that amount.
Sijus Maasi, Mr. Chair. Considering that we don't know what the is going to go on with the other agency and the other pages, I think it's more prudent to let those technical corrections occur by OFB. So I withdraw any other adjustments in this revenue section because I just think that OFB needs that flexibility to make the technical corrections. Sijus Maasi, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Kelly. You wouldn't have to withdraw it because you never announced it, but thank you for not posing the amendment. It was posted. Unless there any objection to that, I don't think anybody has any objection. We'll just move along. Is there any? I don't see any other amendments proffered by any of my colleagues for page 5. All right, I'm looking at the screen. We're at page 6. Do we have any motions or any amendments for page 6? I see nothing. All right, and that we will now move to page 7. On page 7, we will move with amendment introduced by Senator Clint Rigel, as I'm looking at the list. All right, my colleagues, Senator Rigel, your amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. One moment. Let me just pull it up. Okay, so all right, this amendment is to lines 20 through 25 of page 7. And this is what we discussed before about DOE's Series 2010A certificates of participation, the bonds, and the debt service. So as we discussed earlier in the budget process, we actually need to increase the debt service payments to reflect the correct amount that they need to pay for DOE. And I'll go ahead and read the amendment into the record. So it's lines 20 through 25 of page 7, amend section 7A to read: A, Guam Department of Education Series 2010A Certificates of Participation John F. Kennedy High School Project. We will scratch out the number $4,545,050 and replace it with $6,695,050. And then in the general fund section, scratching out 2009.
That's $2 million.
$2 million. Yeah, $977,050. Changing it to $5,127,050, and Territorial Educational Facilities Fund insurance and maintenance to $1,568,000. So it's just making that correction to the amount that we need to pay for the debt service on this. Now, just to note, I believe your committee was also going to have to adjust the budget for DOE to reflect this adjustment as well, correct?
That's correct.
So that your committee is gonna have to do that, I guess, later on in the budget and the DOE portion to reflect these changes. So I'm just proffering the amendment to actually make sure we pay the correct debt service amount.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second? Senator Amanda, I see several hands. We'll move for discussion and we'll begin with Senator Shelton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As was discussed earlier in this committee meeting about the necessity for this amendment to be made, I am in support of the amendment.
Thank you. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too support your Vice Chair's amendment at this time.
Thank you. Madam Vice Speaker, oversight of Department of Education, ma'am. You need to turn on your mic, ma'am.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a note that essentially we're pulling from the general fund, close to $2 million or $2 million, and then we're pulling so we're pulling from the general fund $2 million, and so really, where are we going to one, put the savings, because I know that earlier discussions we were talking with Gita to go out for this bond, and they haven't really moved on it yet, and so it seems like this type of bond to see the original savings that was put in OFB at $4 million some dollars, that this is going to be done later in the year. But where will we pull the money of this $2 million change from the general fund? That would be my question, and the first question. And then the second one would be, do I need to proffer an amendment to ensure that Department of Education receives that savings realized if and when they do go out for the bond, or is that something that your committee will be doing?
Well, first, Madam Vice, I'm going to have OFB speak on that because that was discussed in general, and I think if I'm correct, my colleagues, it was discussed the money will come as agreed by DOE, from DOE, and then they'll be reimbursed, and then all the savings will go to DOE. I just want to get Steve to give a comment to that in reference to his conversation with the superintendent. We want to make sure that whatever savings does go to the same agency that had to foot the bill. Steve, if you can comment to that, please.
Yes, Senator. When I spoke to Superintendent John Fernandez, he did indicate that he was in support of the measure, and that we were going to tap GDOE's general fund appropriation in the amount of $1,250,000, and that it was supposed to come from their general fund appropriation. Nowhere in specific did we identify in the general fund what categories or what programs that would affect. It was just the understanding that once the savings was realized after the bond was negotiated and secured, that this money will go back to GDOE. If I may note, on page 152 of the bill, I believe section 3, there's also the provision that allows that any savings coming from the result of the refinancing of this bond would go back to GDOE.
All right, then, so an amendment would not be required, be proffered by the oversight chair, correct? Because it's built within the Budget Act already.
Yes, it is, Senator.
All right, thank you. Madam Vice, are we, did that answer pretty much your question, ma'am?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on page 152, section 3, the additional funding appropriated to the Guam Department of Education for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2021, in addition to other funding appropriated to GDOE, Guam legislature appropriates
any savings realized from the refinancing, refunding of this bond shall go back to GDOE. At least no less than the amount that we took to secure the total payment required for the JFK bond debt service.
All right, and Madam Vice, we'll make sure that the legal bureau does make sure that it does meet that requirement. We want to protect DOE. We don't want to just take money.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, Senator Lee, you're next on the list. Ma'am, you have any comments or? Did she disappear on? Oops. I think she got.
She probably got booted off, Mr. Chair. Maybe.
All right.
We'll
just go to
Senator and come back.
Okay, we'll go to Senator Kelly, and then we'll come back to her as soon as she comes back on. Senator Kelly, do you have any comments or discussion?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, not at this time. Okay, do you support the measure, the amendments?
Absolutely. This falls in line with our discussion with the superintendent. And so, yes, I believe we made a commitment at that time.
All right. Okay. Senator Peter Turley.
I'm good with that, Joe.
All right.
I support the amendment.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Teresa Turley, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand from our earlier discussions that this would result, or if they refinance the bond for the JFK, that it would result in a $2.1 million savings for fiscal year 21. We haven't fully examined the whole bond refinancing, which is a little unusual, but we normally go through that very thoroughly. But I don't object to this to this amendment that is going to ensure that we are appropriating the correct amount for debt service as of today. And Gita has promised that this would be refinanced at approximately October 13, which is good news if that's when it happens, because that's the very beginning of the fiscal year, and hopefully then will not have a negative impact on GDOE. So that's the hope. And if anything changes, I hope that they will keep us informed like promptly, because if they're unable to come through with this, we should know right away, Mr. Chair. And so, yes, I'm wishing them the best on this refinancing, and that the money, as is stated in your bill in the last chapter, that it's going to go, all savings will go to DOE, and I support that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. And yes, I know that Senator Clint, who oversees GITA, and my office will make sure we monitor that because that's highly sensitive. Senator Paris, ma'am, do you have any comments for discussion?
Comments, it falls in line. No comments, it falls in line with the discussion and
All
the
right.
commitment to GDOE.
Thank you. Senator Tello Tadaqui, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have no objections to this amendment, and I appreciate the Vice Speaker and Oversight Chair of Education reading the section that assures that any kind of savings would come, so it's clear and to the point. But there is one question I'd like to ask you, Steve, with regards to the payment of these bonds. Is it something done all at once, or is there an installment that happens throughout the year?
Senator, normally, from my understanding, most of these bond debts services payments are required at the beginning of the fiscal year. There may may be one or two that you can stagger, I believe, for the next month or first quarter. But from my experience, I believe a lot of these debt service are required to be paid in the beginning of the fiscal year.
Wow. Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Steve.
All right, thank you. Senator Torres, ma'am.
Thank you. I just want to thank Senator Nelson for asking the most important question at the start of the dialogue. I have no objection. I think this is absolutely necessary to have a truly balanced and reflective budget. Thank you.
All right, Senator Moylan.
No objections, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator Castro.
No objections, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Muñoz.
I have no objection, Mr. Chair, just based on the conversations that we had with the superintendent last week. Thank you.
All right, still don't see Senator Kelly. Senator Lee. Joe, do we have a problem with Senator Lee getting back on? I think she got.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. She is currently restarting her electronic device to log back on at this time.
All right, we'll just give her a couple minutes and then we'll be able to bring her back on. To make sure everybody's is able to speak. Let's see.
Senator Lee, could you just do a sound check, please?
Mic check, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Senator Lee is back.
All right, Senator Lee, do you have any comments you'd like to make on the amendment?
Sure, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much. I do have a question for the mover of the amendment. It's my understanding that he's moving it for the Office of Finance and Budget, but I just wanted to, I guess I'm having some difficulty with the idea of kind of gambling with the budget if this refinance isn't 100% secure. And I know that the Guam Department of Education has agreed to this reduction in their budget. It's certainly not the best case scenario. I think we've left them with no other option. So I guess my question to the mover of this amendment, if he has a response, is because other amendments failed and no other solutions have been proffered, this is taking out of GDOE's general fund appropriation to cover something that will hopefully be replaced once we receive potential savings on a bond. Is that correct? Am I understanding this correctly?
Yep. Yes, that's correct. So if we had adopted those revenues that you moved the amendment to increase the withholding, right? Was it withholding? Yeah. If we had adopted that, we could have used those revenues to cover this debt service, but we didn't, so we can't bottom line is this is debt service that has to be paid right off the top. It's just like paying a loan. Bottom line is you gotta budget your loan payments, period. It's like the mortgage of a house. That's the first thing you pay. So this has to be done. Where the money comes from now has to be figured out whatever way. And the way that's been presented is to take it out of DOE's budget. DOE has agreed that they're okay with that, but it is all hinging on whether or not this is actually refinanced to put the money back into GDOE's budget. So yes, absolutely, you're correct. But the only other alternative would be to pull money from other agencies, pull $2 million from another agency and appropriate it, deduct it from the other agency so that it would cover this increase in appropriation here.
All right, thank you, Senator Rigel. And just to clarify, no other solutions to date have been proffered to make up for this gap.
Not that I'm aware of. Nope. This is just, yeah, all I'm doing here is ensuring that we pay our loan and we budget the correct amount to pay this loan. Debt service.
Understood.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, bondholders, it's going to violate bond covenants. We have to make sure we pay debt service on bonds.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. We will now move to vote on this amendment. Joe Meskin, if you can go ahead and do the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the amendment by Senator Rigel and seconded by Senator Shelton, Chairman San Agustin?
Aye.
Chairman San Agustin, aye. Vice Chair Rigel?
Aye.
Vice Chair Rigel, aye. Vice Chair Shelton?
Again.
Vice Chair Shelton, aye. Speaker Munoz-Barnes?
Good.
Speaker Munoz-Barnes, aye. Senator Lee?
Pass.
Senator Lee, pass. Senator Therese Terlahi?
Yeah.
Senator Therese Terlahi, aye. Senator Peter Terlahi?
Again.
Senator Peter Terlahi, aye. Senator Mars Taitano?
Again.
Senator Mars Taitano, aye. Senator Castro?
Again, so just Masi.
Senator Castro, aye. Senator Moylan?
Aye.
Senator Moylan, aye. Senator Munya?
Again.
Senator Munya, aye. Vice Speaker Nelson?
Again.
Vice Speaker Nelson, aye. Senator Perez?
Again.
Senator Perez, aye. Senator Torres?
Again.
Senator Torres, aye. Senator Taitui?
Again.
Senator Taitui, aye. Senator Lee?
Again.
Senator Lee, aye. Mr. Chair, you have 15 aye votes.
Thank you, my colleagues. That amendment will be engrossed into the bill. Senator Clint, you have another amendment, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar thing, this time, excuse me, it's for the HOT bond, the hotel occupancy tax bond. Similar situation. It's currently underfunded in the budget, so we got to increase the funding to reflect the correct debt service payments that are required. My understanding is it's the same kind of thing where the TAF will be reimbursed once the HOT bond is refinanced, and then those savings will be reflected. So my amendment is just to increase the amounts of the correct debt service amount. So line 27, page 7, HOT bond, amend section 7B to read, cross out $4,098,087 to read $6,996,200.
Do we have a second? Senator Tello and Senator Torres. we'll move now for any comments. As Madam Senator Vice Amanda Sheldon, ma'am.
No comments. Again, as we discussed, this is a necessary amendment that the agencies support, and so I'm in support as well.
All right, Madam Speaker Tina Munoz Barnes, ma'am.
No objection, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
All right, Madam Vice Speaker Senator Talina Nelson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No objection.
All right, thank you, Senator Lee, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just registering the same concerns with this measure, with this amendment as with the last amendment. It's risky. There's no guarantee that these savings will be realized with a refinance of a bond that has yet to go out. It's just incredibly risky at this point. It's not a conservative approach that many of the members have registered their strong desire for. And it leaves another important agency, the Guam Visitors Bureau, in a lurch in the same way that we just did with GDOE. But I understand, Mr. Chair, that we're left with no other option as no other alternatives have been proffered. No other solutions have been proffered at this time. And so I just, I register my concerns with this amendment.
All right, thank you. Senator Kelly.
Yes, it's one of those situations of supporting the intent and not really objecting because the intent is important, and yeah, we're trying to make sure that we're realizing those savings, which we have indications they're going to be occurring at this point. So no real objections to Judith Masi.
All right, thank you, Senator Jose Pito Terlay, sir.
Joe, I don't know where we're gonna get the 2 million, but I support that amendment.
All right, thank you. Senator Therese Terlay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the amendment because it's absolutely critical. We cannot not fully finance the debt service. So it's actually, we should look at it like a technical error that we need to put that amount in here. We cannot reflect the savings before we actually achieve that savings, before they've actually gone out for the bond. So this amendment merely puts the correct amount as to what our debt really is for the fiscal year. And it increases the current amount by 2.898, which is significant. And but this bond, we're going to talk about it again at the end of the bill, but this bond is a little bit more precarious because it's not intended to be refinanced in October. They've indicated to us that they would achieve more savings if they go for this closer to February. So again, there's a lot of unknowns, but in the interim, we need to finance, we need to account for the debt service. There's just no way around that. So I support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator Sabina Paris.
No objections, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Talatariwi, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No objections.
All right, Senator Mary Torres. Senator Torres.
Well stated, Senator Terlahi. No objections.
Thank you, Senator Moylan.
But
you got to turn on your mic. There you go.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just like to get Mr. Girls to weigh in on the discussion, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Does they want to get your input in reference to the hot bonds?
Okay. Same thing. I had a conversation with the former Governor Gutierrez on the issue. I explained to him what the situation was and that I was frank with him. I said, since the majority of the TAF revenues were allocated to GVB, and not to nickel and dime all the other agencies that were funded from the TAF, he agreed in principle to go ahead and utilize the GVB appropriations for FY21 to cover the shortfall in the debt service for the hot bond. Again, with the caveat that when this bond is refinanced or refunded, that all savings go back to GVB, if not at no less than the amount that we took from them, which is the exact amount of what Senator Terlaje said at $2,898,113. And the provision also regarding the hot bond refinancing, as far as any savings, can be found on page 158 in section 3, which is almost kind of similar to that of the GDOE bond savings.
All right, Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Steve.
All right.
You're welcome.
Senator Castro.
No objections, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator Luis Muñoz. Ma'am.
No comments, Mr. Chair.
All right, being that, trying to see if I saw an objection. We'll just move to vote. Joe, if we can do the roll call for. All right.
On the amendment by Senator Rigel, Chairman San Agustin.
Aye.
Chairman San Agustin, aye. Vice Chair Rigel.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rigel, aye. Vice Chair Shelton.
Again.
Vice Chair Shelton, aye. Speaker Muñoz Barnes.
Again.
Speaker Muñoz Barnes, aye. Senator Lee.
Pass.
Senator Lee, pass. Senator Therese Terlaje.
Again.
Senator Therese Terlaje, aye. Senator Peter Terlaje.
Again, por favor.
Senator Peter Terlaje, aye. Senator March Taitzano.
Again.
Senator March Taitzano, aye. Senator Castro.
Again.
Senator Castro, aye. Senator Moylan.
Aye.
Senator Moylan, aye. Senator Muñoz.
Again.
Senator Muñoz, aye. Vice Speaker Nelson.
Again.
Vice Speaker Nelson, aye. Senator Perez.
Again.
Senator Perez, aye. Senator Torres.
Again.
Senator Torres, aye. Senator Taitzigui.
Again.
Senator Taitzigui, aye. Senator Lee.
Again.
Senator Lee, aye. Mr. Chair, you have 15 unanimous votes.
Thank you, my colleagues. This amendment will be engrossed into the bill. We will now move to the next amendment I see on our screen is an amendment by I think it's Senator Therese Terlaje. Senator Therese, I think you have an amendment on the same page 7, line 7. If I'm correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Page 7, line 7. Yes. It's to add a new.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. It's my amendment would be to add a new subsection to section 5 of the bill. Section 5 of the bill talks about revenue collections in excess of quarterly collections. And so in subsection A of this section, it sets up it mandates BBMR to set up a formula for the revenues that we projected to put that into a budget as to how much can be spent per month. And of course, to report those in the CRER reports to the legislature monthly so that we can see the actual revenues versus what we have budgeted. Actual collections, yes, versus what we budgeted to be spent. Subsection B, again, talks about reporting. Subsection C allows for an appropriation that if we receive funds in excess of adopted revenue levels for the highway fund, that those would be appropriated to DPW for flood mitigation and other purposes. So my new subsection is similar to that, and it would be to add a new subsection that says, notwithstanding any other provision of law all fiscal year 2021 withholding and corporate income tax revenues collected per quarter in excess of the revenue level adopted or revenue budgeted for that quarter for both categories combined pursuant to 1A of Section 2 of Chapter 1 of this Act are hereby,
As
are
reflected.
hereby, as reflected, sorry, I don't have that. As reflected in the CRER, in the monthly CRER, are hereby appropriated to the Department of Public Health and Social Services for expansion of its environmental health inspections, its other regulatory purposes, and other DPHSS operations. The total appropriated amount of revenues collected in excess of the revenue level adopted for the entire fiscal year 2021, pursuant to this subsection, shall not exceed $6 million. This appropriation shall not be subject to any transfer authority of the Governor of Guam. The Director of DPHSS shall submit a report to the Speaker of the Legislature in Guahan regarding the expenditures of the appropriations contained herein, no later than 30 days after the end of each quarter. And if I may, Mr. Chair, so what, we talked about, well, we haven't got to the public health section yet. However, it's public health, we've looked at the BBMR spreadsheets, and it's very clear that the operations appropriation to public health is significantly less in FY21, and it's approximately $13 million less for operations than what they received in FY20. And BBMR was proposing that they need 14 million more for operations, but I want to commend OFB because OFB actually gave a little bit more to the Medicaid and the CHIP. But if I may, Mr. Chair, the information we are getting from public health is that even with the increases that we are putting in this bill towards Medicaid and CHIP, we are not able to meet the full amount that could be made available to Guam, that our matching is not enough, that we would need more in order to match those funds. However, so that's one issue, but what I'm trying to address by this amendment is, to me, a bigger issue, and that is the operations of public health at this time. With the 13 million, most of the appropriations are allocated for very specific purposes, such as the matching and things like that. But with the shortfall in operations, public health has told us they will have a tremendous difficulty in meeting their existing programs. And of course, we're trying to ensure that they're able to meet the new demands of the new business operations and health safety concerns that we all are putting on them going forward. So in 2020, they were appropriated for operations 22.5 million. In this bill, there's an appropriation for 9 million. So what I'm proposing is that if there is any excess, if there is any revenue that comes in withholding tax or corporate tax that exceeds what we are projecting by this bill, that amount be appropriated to public health at the end of every quarter. So they not have to wait for the end of a fiscal year or an audit, that it occurs at the end of the quarter, and that that we still honor this prediction that OFB has made, that we are all cutting tremendously the operations of the government and $66 million in total. But I just feel like for public health, if we do get any excess revenue, any additional dollars that come in, that we appropriate that. And another reason why I want to put this amendment in, Mr. Chair, is because we've seen that if there is excess revenue and the legislature does not appropriate it, that executive branch has spent that money and not necessarily willing to account for it, immediately to us as to what the priorities were for that money. So this is to just ensure that if there's excess revenue, this is the priority, and that we want it to go. We don't want to cut the operations of public health at this time, Mr. Chair. I hope I've explained that adequately, but I'm open to any questions. And I urge my colleagues to please assist me in this effort. Thank you.
All right, do we have a second? I'm looking out for if there's a hand for a second. Senator Torres and Senator Paris and Senator Tello. So we will begin the discussion. We will start with my vice, Senator Clint Rigel. Sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have some concerns with this. I understand what the proffer of the amendment is hoping to accomplish, but my concerns are that typically it's not a good idea to appropriate revenues before they're realized. And these are surplus revenues these are revenues we just voted on, saying we don't believe they're gonna get these revenues. So now this is saying, well, maybe they might get the revenues, so let's go ahead and appropriate it. So that's my concern. And also, especially on a quarterly level, it's really not good fiscal policy to appropriate surplus revenues on a quarterly level. And that's because sometimes in a quarter they can have a surplus, but by the end of the year, not end with a surplus because the other quarters came in lower. So there could be surplus revenues in the first quarter, and let's say the second quarter is bad and there's actually a deficit. They get less revenues than they expected in the second quarter, maybe even the third quarter. And that's my concern, is that it's not good policy to appropriate surpluses before they're realized, as well as appropriate.
Madam Speaker.
I'll reserve my comment and continue to hear my colleagues, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Madam Vice Speaker, Senator Nelson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regard to this amendment, the shall not exceed $6 million for the inspections. Is there a specific reason why we put a number amount for that $6 million? I'm sorry if I might have missed it.
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm putting 6 million because, their shortfall is about 13 million or 13 or 14, whichever, whosever's number you look at. But it's significant. However, I realize that, there are decreases in many budgets across the board. And so I'm actually just trying to get them up to they could use more. I guess that's the only thing I can say. I put 6 million because I wanted to make sure they get at least, they've requested 3 million from the CARES money that they've not been promised. Remember when we got the CARES budget, DPHSS only received $700,000. And so I urged them, why is that? Why aren't you asking for more money? And so they did. They requested 3 million to expand their environmental health inspection capacity and for their and other purposes. They did not receive that from the CARES money. They did receive other federal money for tracing and testing, but because this is the appropriation in this bill is going to decrease their current operations, while we are asking them to do additional tasks. I'm trying to just get it up to current. It's not up to current. I didn't put 13 million, but I'm trying to put what is reasonable, I guess, in light of what's possible. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to digest.
All right, Senator Lee. Ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share some of the concerns that were raised by previous speakers. I do think that the language in the amendment relating to quarterly appropriations or quarterly transfers, it's challenging. It's dangerous, I think, a dangerous fiscal policy to move forward in that way. I think one of the reasons why we adopt a revenue going forward is so that all the agencies can plan ahead. And I also, I know the mover of the amendment had mentioned that it's not enough. It's not enough to address the shortfall for this agency. And I completely agree. It's not enough to address that shortfall. It's not enough to address the shortfall at the Guam Department of Education, who we've spent many, many hours hearing from over the last few days. And I really hope that we can all advocate for. Also our safety agencies. Everybody is being shorted in this budget, and I think it's really concerning that at least our top 3 priorities of education, safety, and health need to be considered. And so I have some concerns with the language in this amendment, and I think we all need to take some time to really review it and think about the way that we are adopting this fiscal policy and the direction that we're giving these subsequent agencies in terms of planning for the future. I'll just leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Kelly. Ma'am.
Sijuis Masi, Mr. Chair. Along with the others, we recognize that public health is absolutely one of our top priorities. And we need to, as much as we can, to prioritize it. It's also been mentioned that, of course, education is still there and public safety are still there. And so I too am interested in continuing to hear some information, because I do have concern about, well, just with these fluctuations. With the fluctuations, I mean, if we go in, if we go into PCOR 1 again, and it's an extended amount, like we just don't know. We're trying to predict in a steady manner in a way that it will balance each other out over the long haul. That if, like we saw for, I believe it was March, April, and May, we saw some real lows, but then we saw some real highs, and we were allowed to balance it out. And so I just worry that we might be not allowing ourselves to balance it out. But I do believe, as we've talked about before, we do have the opportunity to come back in as needed, especially if indicators are showing us one direction or another. So again, I just want to continue listening and thinking this through, the different concerns, but then also the points that are being made. Sijuis Masi, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Peter Turlai, ma'am. Sir.
Joe, I'm just concerned about issues regarding appropriation versus definite revenue. So that's all my concern. So if we can find something to really help out public health, we need to move forward and get that funding for them.
Yes. Senator Paris. Senator Paris.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, we're dealing with the second surge of the pandemic, and we really need to look at how we're going to flatten the curve. If I could just make an amendment to this to include GMH, because I think we need to definitely support our frontliners and the effort to flatten the curve. And I know that Department of Environmental Health Division of Department of Public Health and Social Services has chronically been underfunded for many years, and we definitely need their surveillance activities, especially at this time. We just came from a briefing on Friday, I believe, and it was very clear that the funding was not sufficient, or I felt that was my impression, that the funding and looking forward to this, trying to flatten the curve, my understanding was that it may not be sufficient to do this. And I think any excess in funds, I mean, this is really, I believe, a matter of urgency to ensure that, we can flatten this curve during the second surge. So I guess my amendment would be to GMH and perhaps other health-related efforts. I think that would be important, I think.
All right, do you have your amendment ready to be presented so we can all see where, how your amendment is written and how you're amending her amendment? You need to turn on your mic, please.
Yeah, so I would probably just add GMH to this. So after other regulatory purposes, and so on line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6 lines down, GMH. So after other regulatory purposes and other DPHSS operations, comma, GMH, Guam Memorial Hospital.
All right, do we have a second to that motion so we can move on that one? I see a hand, Senator Tello. Okay, we're gonna discuss now the amendment to the amendment. All right, my colleagues, and then we'll come back to the main amendment. We'll go backwards now. Senator Clint, do you have any comments to that amendment, to the amendment?
Yeah, since it's not written, Mr. Chair, could the proffered amendment just read again exactly where GMH is going to go and what the exact wording is going to be? So my understanding is, I would say environmental health inspections, its other regulatory purposes, and other DPHSS operations, comma GMH. Is that correct?
Senator Pears?
That's the correct placement.
Should it be and GMH?
Yes, that's exactly, yeah.
Okay, so it'll read its other regulatory purposes and other DPHS operations and GMH.
That is correct, sir.
Okay, that's my
okay.
only comment. I just wanted to be clear on what the amendment was.
Okay, do you have any further comment to that amendment? None. Senator Shelton, ma'am? No comment at this point. Madam Speaker? Do you have any comments? No comments at this time. Senator Vice Speaker, Senator Nelson, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I understand that we want to make sure that we are giving GMH an opportunity as well to in this amendment, but I feel that perhaps that could be a separate amendment. I don't know if that was the intent of the original sponsor to also include who was also the oversight chair of GMH to also include it, but I think that when we're just taking amendments and putting in an addition where an addition is not needed, when we need to be very clear on what we're doing. This amendment is very it's you have to break this amendment down to really understand what the amendment is trying to do. And so I think that if we're really trying to look towards GMH and to realize something for GMH, it could be proffered in another amendment, only because we've seen this happen in the past where we appropriate $10 million to GMH, and just earlier these past couple of weeks we heard Director Burns say that it went to debt payment. And so are we really going to see this money? And so this is just something that I would caution us on before we start building on amendment on amendment on amendment. Thank you, Mr.
All right, Senator Reese, you wanted to comment to that because you are the oversight of both.
So on the amendment, Mr. Chair, if I could, of course, I agree, GMH could use all the money that it can get. However, under this budget and with the severe cuts that we're facing, 66 million overall, OFB has amazingly been able to give GMH $1.4 million more than last year. And so I want to commend OFB for that. And GMH has said that they can work with this number. And I know, we all have reasons to question that, and we will question GMH when they come, but they've also received federal funds that they said they are using, and the governor under the Organic Act has sole authority of GMH. And I have not lost hope that they're going to do the right thing and actually transmit the $10 million for the capital improvements that are needed at GMH. So we're still looking for that, Mr. Chair. And in addition with what you've provided for them in this current bill, I would, it's a public health that we shouldn't pit one against the other, but I just have to say, public health is critically short in their operations. GMH saying they're able to operate with the appropriation they've been given in this bill. At least that's what they told me in the last discussion we've had, Mr. Chair.
All right, we'll move now then. Senator Lee?
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, after hearing from the Chair of Health, I would withdraw the amendment to the amendment.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any objection to the withdrawal of the amendment? Hearing and seeing none, we'll just do a roll call to make sure that nobody says they didn't get a shot to speak. Joe Mesgon, please take the roll call, please, on the withdrawal of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the withdrawal of the amendment, Chairman St. Augustine?
Aye.
Chairman St. Augustine, aye. Vice Chair Ruggiero?
Senator Clint?
Vice Chairman Ruggiero?
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Shelton?
Again.
Vice Chair Shelton, aye. Speaker Munoz-Barnes?
Hungan.
Speaker Munoz-Barnes, aye. Senator Lee?
Hungan.
Senator Lee, aye. Senator Therese Terlahi?
Again.
Senator Therese Terlahi, aye. Senator Peter Terlahi?
Hungan.
Senator Peter Terlahi, aye. Senator Mars Taitano?
Again.
Senator Mars Taitano, aye. Senator Castro?
Good.
Senator Castro, aye. Senator Moylan?
Aye.
Senator Moylan, aye. Senator Munya?
Hungan.
Senator Munya, aye. Vice Speaker Nelson?
Again.
Vice Speaker Nelson, aye. Senator Perez?
Again.
Senator Perez, aye. Senator Torres?
Hungan.
Senator Torres, aye. Senator Taitui?
Again.
Senator Taitui, aye. Mr. Chair, you have 15 ayes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, my colleagues. The withdrawal has been adopted, accepted. We'll go back now to the amendment and continue on with the listing. And Senator Perez, you were the last one and you spoke. So Senator Tello Taitui, ma'am, on the amendment of Senator Therese Terlahi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. You know, Mr. Chair, it was mentioned by one of my other colleagues regarding this health crisis that we're in right now, and any kind of assistance that we can provide Department of Public Health and Services is desperately needed. I mean, look where we are today. We're on lockdown today, and they can't even do any more community testing because they're still working on contact tracing. So the contact tracing is really huge right now, and they're understaffed and they're undermanned with equipment, with tests. So, Mr. Chair, we had a meeting with public health, all of us senators, and we just saw how much work that they're doing right now, and they're in dire need. Now, the way I see this amendment working, Mr. Chair, is that any excess revenue that comes out will go to public health up to $6,000. Now it's 6 million. And every quarter, it's every quarter, not every month, but every quarter it's assessed. So every 4 months it's assessed. And there is a cap on it. Many times when we see any excess revenue from this government, we're still waiting for FY19. Where's the excess revenue there? You know, we don't get to see it. We don't get to touch it. And by the time we find out how much money is there or left over, it's already been spent. And that's the issue here that we're dealing with. This gives us an opportunity to appropriate to public health, a department that right now is dealing with this pandemic. And we all agree that this is going to be a lot longer than a couple months down the line. This is almost going to be a year to 2 years to address. So it's in desperate need for this money. We all know that. And I'm sure everybody wants to put forward any kind of excess revenue or any opportunity to give to public health. And that's what this amendment will do. We won't have to wait for an audit. We already can see it. Our job as our job as a legislature is to appropriate revenue, and anything that's excess, we have that authority to do so. Now, there is a cap at 6 million. And if I'm not mistaken, if we had BBMR on this chat right now, they're confident that there's going to be additional funding. So, Mr. Chair, I stand in full support of this, and I ask my colleagues to think about this. We're in a crisis, a health crisis, and we need to deal with this. And if any chance that there is, after a quarter, not 1 month, any excess revenue, 2 months, any excess revenue, 3 months, it's a quarter, 4 months. That's enough to adjust. And I'm pretty sure, Mr. Chair, that any kind of release that's done throughout the year, we can stay on top of it. Like Senator Marsh mentioned, we can make those changes. We can make those changes, yes, but once at the end of the year, the fiscal year, where was the opportunity for this legislature to make changes with any excess revenue? When did we have that opportunity? We did not. We still don't see an audit. Even a year later, we still have not seen an audit. So this way, we're ensuring, this legislature is ensuring that this money goes to an agency that's dealing with the health crisis today. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and I stand in full support of this amendment.
All right, thank you. I am getting texts from my colleagues that a follow-up question, but I'm going to finish off first the list, and then I'll get back to you, my colleagues. Senator Torres, ma'am.
Thank you. This is one of those amendments that is very hard to disagree with the intent. We all know that public health is short at what they are required. We also know that, this is the time where many people without employment most need health care through the Department of Public Health and Social Services, in addition to all that they do to help monitor and address the COVID-19 issues. But we are also, we have to be realistic about the fact that we weren't willing to increase the budget at the front end because we're uncertain about the revenues. So I believe the body was conservative in that regard. And to now, be a little bit risky and say, well, we're going to appropriate any excesses per quarter, I think is, the logic really defies that conservative approach that we took in the beginning. And so I think that the vice chair was correct, especially with the cyclical nature of collections. I mean, we can't even reconcile how we have excesses in collections at a time when it's really austere. People are out of work and yet collections are high in terms of withholding taxes and BPT. So my point here is that, if we're going to be consistent in our position that we're uncertain about whether the CARES Act is responsible for the healthy collections in taxes or, whatever the anomalies are and the reason for that, we have to be consistent that we're not so sure what 2021 is going to be like. So with that, I would have to concur with the vice chair, Senator Rangel, that it would be really unfair and imprudent to allocate appropriate monies in excess per quarter, because as we've seen, even in the last, you had huge peaks and valleys, in the collections, where it was lean for a period and then it was very healthy in latter months. So public health no doubt needs the money. It would be in our best interest to appropriate, or the next legislature to appropriate, any time that it can realize this excesses to public health. But I think at this time in the budget bill, we either decide that we're going to have excess revenues and bank on that and just appropriate it now, adjust the general fund revenues upward and appropriate now, or we wait until later when we're certain what those collections are. Because otherwise you really are just appropriating phantom funds. And at this point, when we can't even be sure that we're going to be healthy. We can't even be sure that we're going to collect those numbers. Let's at least stick with, if it's our position to be conservative, let's stick with a conservative budget. If there are excesses, which is usually determined at the close of the fiscal year, then that's the time to appropriate excesses. But, short of that, I think is not, it really doesn't serve anybody a good purpose by hoping for something. We either know that we're going to get there, or have a good feeling and do it now and make, add the $6 million up front and appropriate it now, or we don't. And so I really tough. You want to give DPS as much as you can up front, but not having it up front, I think, is not the way to go with this amendment, because we don't have it up front.
All right, Senator Torres, thank you. Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can ask the author regarding the amendment. I think this is something similar to what we experienced in our FY20 budget and I think our other senators have also mentioned this, at the time when we did know of an excess, but we were told post-pandemic here, or pre-pandemic rather, that the senators have no control over any money in excess. And BBMR, as well as DOA, said they know where the money is supposed to go, but it's not up to the senators to decide that. So I'm just wondering, my first question to the author is this a solution that you're looking for based on our past experience to prevent this from happening again, based on our past experience? And of course, we were told also that waiting for the audit, which we're in budgets again, and we still haven't received the audit to determine if there is any excess. So that's the first question. And then the second question is just on clarification. Is the author actually trying to appropriate this money into the budget of the department, or are we saying if it so comes? We're not trying to. Are you trying to appropriate the money today, or you're saying if the money comes in the future, then we can look at that? Those are my two questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would the author of the amendment yield to the question?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the question. And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. Yes, I am writing this amendment and trying to craft it to overcome the response that we received last year when we tried to appropriate excess revenues that we already knew about in FY19. We were told 22 million. It turns out to be 32 million. And they claimed that the legislature has no say in where that goes because of the way we wrote the bill. So yes, I'm trying to tie this to the quarterly CRERs, and it's a balance between, saying we're going to receive this money, which I can't say today, versus if we receive this money, completely losing control of where that's going to go. This is an attempt to lock in by appropriation those amounts towards public health so that we very clearly show that's the priority. And I feel like there is no risk in this because if first of all, the quarterly balances out the monthly fluctuations, and the CRER also takes into account when they put their projected revenues over the year, they account for their expected fluctuations. So there's kind of a double protection. But of course, no one is the high authority that can predict these to a T. But I feel like it's a very balanced, conservative. It's not the best for planning, but it absolutely very clearly ties up the money. That's the goal. Secondly, it says public health is the priority over every other, for the 6 million. And if there's more than that, that's up for grabs. But for that 6 million that public health needs, that they can get it if it comes in. And it's balanced over the quarterly. And this is traditionally quarterly is how they look at the, when the legislature should redo a budget is if exactly what I'm describing happens, right? Then we should relook at the budgets. However, I'm afraid that we will not have that kind of luxury because the money will be tied up before we are able to appropriate it. So yes, I'm trying to appropriate it now and ensure that it is prioritized, at least the 6 million of it, if it comes in. Now, of course, hardship to public health if it doesn't come in, but it's more hardship right now the way the bill reads, Mr. Senator. Thank you.
Senator Moylan, does that answer your questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the reply. Thank you.
All right, Senator Castro, Senator Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I support the retiring speaker's comments. I don't know, it's that once bitten, twice shy. I remember in the fiscal year 20 negotiations, Mr. Chairman, I voted in favor of the budget. We've had Senator Talahi intends to build in certain protections. I think that it's important enough to put into this provision, into the Budget Act, this provision that would dedicate monies to addressing what really is perhaps the most important thing before the people of Guam right now, aside from unemployment, which is this pandemic. And so with that said, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to discuss an amendment to her amendment, which would include a clause. I submitted it to the chat, and I believe members of your staff uploaded it to the Google Drive. It's basically a provision there that would include contact tracing into the amendment, Senator Talahi's amendment, as part of that $6 million. Mr. Chairman?
All right. If you can just read your amendment.
Sure.
My colleagues, you should be able to see that if possible.
Thank you. So if you would take a moment and open Senator Talahi's amendment, or go ahead and refer to the file that I submitted to the chat. The only amendment to her amendment would be after the word DPHS operations. My amendment would read as follows, quote, inclusive of but not limited to contact tracing programs and technologies, end quote. Mr. Chairman, I just found it necessary to put that into the Senator Talahi's amendment as a policy position of this body, so that the authority, the executive branch, could prioritize contact tracing so that additional resources go into that effort. I think there's tremendous value in attaining this additional information to further prevent the spread of the virus.
All right. Do we have a second on that motion before we go back and we start discussing that? Senator Tello's waved her hand, and Senator Perez. Okay, we're getting close to taking a recess. It's 11:47 right now, my colleagues. That being said, before we start up, Senator Castro, I want to address yours. Why don't we go and just continue on then for now, and then we'll see how far we get. Senator Clinton, do you have any comments to that amendment, to the amendment?
No, I support it. Yeah, I support it.
All right. Senator Shelton?
No objection.
All right. Madam Speaker?
No objection.
All right. Madam Vice Speaker, Senator Nelson, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify, for the contact tracing, inclusive of technology, isn't that what the CARES Act is for? Is that not what the executive branch should be utilizing that specific money for? And so we see that there's still a large appropriation left from the CARES Act. And so I'm just trying to, try to understand how this money is utilized fully. And if we have this appropriation for the CARES Act, we don't want to be able to say, we were told by the legislature that we have to use it for this money. So it's just the semantics of it all, Mr. Chair. If it's a federal appropriation that we can avail to because of the CARES Act, and if putting that kind of language will impact the revenues of the general fund, that's just my concern.
Yes, I understand. I agree with you 100%. I'd like to know where the CARES money's at. Senator Lee?
Again, Mr. Chair, I wholeheartedly agree that public health and contact tracing and everything, all the resources that the government has to combat this virus should be realized. But I'm very concerned about this entire amendment and the fiscal policy that we're putting forward. I believe, last week, Friday, the amendment for $4.6 million wasn't conservative enough. But now this amendment says $6 million and they're saying that it's conservative. So it really, I agree with the previous speaker, it defies logic. So I don't have any, I have some concerns with this amendment in particular, just because it also leaves out some of our other priorities like education and public safety. So while, again, public health and contact tracing is right up there on our list, I feel like some of these other priorities are also not getting a fair shake, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Senator Kelly.
Yeah, I appreciate what's been discussed thus far. I would like to hear about the CARES Act money to help me be better informed before we actually do a vote. I think that would really help. On that, although of course I support the idea of better contact tracing and so forth. We just want to understand. So I really appreciate one of the former speakers on asking about the CARES Act money and where that's at. I do continue to have concern about other priorities as well, even though of course we all agree that this is a public health crisis and we really want to support it. So I do ask if we can have some time to get that information.
All right, thank you. Senator Peter Chulay, sir.
So I don't have any comment for the amendment. I support the amendment, but I'm just kind of I think we're putting the cart before the bull on this one. Like I said in the beginning, I have some issues regarding, placing an appropriation without definite budget revenue. But I do support the amendment from Senator Lai and even Senator Castro. But we just need to move forward and see what we can do to help public health. We cannot deviate from supporting the public health from any of the things that they do. And I feel that the CARES Act would really cover some of the shortfalls that we have, that we're talking about, even the $6 million. So with that, I do support the amendment from both Senator Therese and Senator Castro. Thank you, Joe.
All right, thank you, Senator Chulay. Senator Therese, on Senator Castro's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the amendment because it doesn't mandate that the money be used on that, but it allows that it be used on that specific purpose, and it gives flexibility to public health. And I think they need flexibility because first of all, their current operations are cut, and in addition to their current operations, they're supposed to conduct these additional tasks, tracing, testing. And we know that they have received some federal money for this, but we would hopefully can go into more detail with that with public health, but they've received some. The questions that we continue to have and that we have since, it was proposed that we are going to open up after our first PCOR one, were that, are you operating at sufficient capacity to keep the community safe? In other words, we all knew that testing was necessary, tracing was going to be necessary, and that those capacities were mandatory if we are going to continue to conduct business. And I actually believe that we can open up more if we are up to full speed on those things, Mr. Chair. Now, they continue to outline for us the federal money that they've received for these additional labs, these testing kits, and increased capacity personnel. But so I have no objection to this amendment. But it is very ironic that we are kind of full circle here on, we had no input on where that CARES money was going to go. We even overrode a bill to mandate that we get expenditure reports on where that CARES money is going to go. Public Health submitted a request for additional money from the CARES. I haven't seen that they've received additional money from that pot at least, although they've received other grants. But so, we are over here trying to ensure, yes, that I don't want to give public health money for something that they can get a grant for. So I just think we're good. And we are allowing them the flexibility. I appreciate the flexibility in the amendment that if they need it for this purpose, then by all means use it, or, to match a federal grant, any other purpose that would increase their capacity. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Paris, Sabina Paris, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the efforts of the proffer of the amendment. I agree that as we're dealing with rising cases of COVID, that we really need to have mount an equal effort to community surveillance. But I think I'm actually more in favor of the broader language, just because we're dealing with federal grants, and if we're too specific, it might take us away from availing ourselves of some of the federal money. So I think, if we can keep it more broad, I think I would advise that.
So you're saying you like the amendment or you don't like the amendment? I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, it's not.
Object or don't object?
Yeah, I guess I would rather keep it the original amendment versus the additional language. And it's not I'm objecting to the intent of it at all. In no means am I objecting to the intent at all. It's just the wording. I feel if we can make it a broader language, it would definitely include that. I hope that suffices. So yes, in a way, it's an objection to the wording, but not the intent.
All right. Okay. Senator Tello-Tadegui, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I stand in full support. As I mentioned earlier about contact tracing and how public health is overwhelmed doing that right now versus having community testing. It's definitely needed, and it's not just today, but it's probably going to happen in the future. And it was mentioned earlier too that we went down this road during our last budget bill discussions in giving excess revenue to the hospital. So I don't see any difference, that we're doing in this amendment as well. But I stand in full support of the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Torres.
I really don't have any objection to it. Thank you.
All right, Senator Moylan.
No objections, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Muñoz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any objections or towards the amendment to the amendment. I don't disagree that we should put some specifics in there if we needed to, I don't know that we have to, but I don't think that it would hurt that we did put some specifics what they would spend that money on. I do, though, have some reservations on the original amendment, and so I will reserve my comments until after this amendment to the amendment moves forward.
All right, being that all comments were already made, I haven't made a comment on that. I'm gonna save it for the first amendment, the original amendment. That's what I've got problems with. But that being said, Joe, let's do a roll call on this amendment so we see if it passes or not.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Senator Castro and Senator Ragel's amendment to the amendment, Chairman St. Augustine.
Aye.
Chairman St. Augustine, aye. Vice Chair Ragel.
Aye.
Vice Chair Ragel, aye. Vice Chair Shelton.
Aye.
Vice Chair Shelton, aye. Speaker Munoz Barnes.
Again.
Speaker Munoz Barnes, aye. Senator Lee.
Again.
Senator Lee, aye. Senator Therese Terlahi.
Okay.
Senator Therese Terlahi, aye. Senator Peter Terlahi.
Again.
Senator Peter Terlahi, aye. Senator Marsh Taitsino.
Sorry, I'm still waiting a little bit of what Senator Sabina stated. If I could pass.
You want to pass?
Yes.
Okay.
Senator Marsh Taitsino, pass. Senator Castro.
Again.
Senator Castro, aye. Senator Moylan.
Aye.
Senator Moylan, aye. Senator Munoz.
Again.
Senator Munoz, aye. Vice Speaker Nelson.
Again.
Vice Speaker Nelson, aye. Senator Perez.
Pass.
Senator Perez, pass. Senator Torres.
Again.
Senator Torres, aye. Senator Taitui.
Good.
Senator Taitui, aye. Senator Marsh Taitsino.
Again.
Senator Marsh Taitsino, aye. Senator Perez.
Nay.
Senator Perez, nay. Mr. Chair, you have 14 ayes and 1 nay.
Thank you, my colleagues. The amendment passes. It is now 12 o'clock. We will recess and return at 1:30. Thank you, my colleagues. See you back at 1:30. Thank you.